Okay, sweetest friends, a quick word of Torah on this week's Parshat Tetzveh. So, I would like to speak about the principle that Moshe's name is not in the Parsha, and about the particular nature of what is discussed in the Parsha. There's a lot of discussion of Aharon, his service, the Kohen Gadol's service, and yet Moshe is taken out. If we remember, Hashem said that I want to destroy the Jewish people, and Moshe said, I'll have no part of it. You can destroy me too. His way of saying that was, you can erase me from your book. And Hashem responds by erasing him from this week's Parsha. So if you'll know, there was a whole incident. It's in Parshas Kitisa, it's next week. But there's a whole incident with the golden calf, and the Jews are worshiping it. And they were sort of aided by Aharon. And that was, of course, done. Aharon got his hands dirty. He even knew that he was going to look bad. But he thought, maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's worth it to help them out instead of resist them. We have a Masorah, the Hur, tried to resist. And yet he ended up getting killed for that. So Aharon was going to resist, and as far as helping, maybe the helping would be in a way he would be in the midst of them, and he'd be able to do some type of delay tactics to make sure that maybe they wouldn't go all the way before Moshe comes down. But yet Moshe comes down, and Moshe smashes the luchot. It's very important to understand the difference in these two iconic personalities, and that we need both of them in the Torah. We need both of them in our lives. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he stems from Netzach. Netzach means victorious. Netzach is an aspect of steadfast resolve for God. Moshe knows what the law is, wants to enact the law, and that's the way it's going to be. Moshe is coming straight from the consciousness of God and relaying that to the people in its purest form. Aharon, on the other hand, Aharon, we see he's got a nature that is one of shalom. He is a pursuer of peace. And he stems from or at least he represents the sphera of Hod. Hod comes from Hoda'ah, and you're going to admit Hod is splendor. Hod is I don't want to say antithetical, but it is pretty much diametrically opposed to Netzach. Hod is one where there's a reason to get involved in that which doesn't seem so holy. Netzach, Moshe Rabbeinu, was all about spirituality in its way that it manifests itself on this earth in its purest form and enacting that. Aharon was one who was willing to get his hands dirty, so to speak, as in be involved in the golden calf. And you see that at the end, what is God's response, right? So you would think that the one who maybe should be in the king's chamber, in the innermost sanctum of the king, he should be somebody who is pure, who is of nothing, who has no blemishes on his record. But we see that Hashem responded by honoring Aharon with the highest form of an honor, that he can come into the Holy of Holies. And this is very important for us to understand, because it gives us a perspective on what is noble in our society. So a lot of people, they cringe. They're afraid of getting involved in anything that doesn't look 100% kosher. And here's Aharon in the midst of building a golden calf, an idol, and Aharon puts himself in the mix, even though he could look bad. And he didn't succeed. See, the thing is, they did end up falling prey, but he tried. And that trying, that love for Am Yisrael was witnessed by God, because God knows everyone's true intentions, and God awards him with the highest of honors, which is described in this week's Parsha. So now to bring it all full circle, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is erased. You're right. Moshe said, you should erase me from my book. And Hashem said, you're right. There is a place for you not to be present. And that is within the Holy of Holies in these big day kahuna. Because this is a realm of someone who is willing to put their neck out on the line, is willing to be that bridge between me and Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael aren't perfect. I am perfect. Who's going to be that bridge? Aharon. Moshe will have a more difficult time relating to the parts of the kahuna that deal with things that aren't so pure. So, for example, just in reference to what we're talking about in this week's parsha, we're dealing with the clothing themselves, and clothing can be material used to be very egocentric. It can inflate your own ego. You can use clothing to say, hey, look at me, I'm a hot shot kind of guy. Or you can use clothing to represent something greater than yourself. And we see that every aspect of the Big Day Kahuna are there to represent something beyond who it really is. So clearly this is going to have everyone recognize who the Kohen Gadol is. But at the same time, each article of clothing, let's just mention two randomly. We've got the bells on the bottom. Those bells are so important that if they're not to be ringing, it's chas v'shalom, the Kohen's life. He's supposed to lay down his life for these bells, whatever that's supposed to mean. But those represent the ones who make the ruckus, the lowest of the low in society, and those need to be ringing. They need to be ringing as the Kohen walks because they too are included. Those noisemakers, the ones who cause such a ruckus, they're very important and very dear to Hashem. And the Kohen represents everything about that dearness. And the same thing, we have a breastplate. It can look very shiny and beautiful. Hey, look at my diamond rings. Look at my ruby watch, all that stuff. But no, each of these stones, they're a kapara for the sin of the golden calf, but they each represent unique talents and traits, and when combined together, deliver a secret message. Because together, Klal Yisrael represent something that they represent a wholesome message for the world. And so it's not to be completely spiritually pure like Moshe Rabbeinu, but have an aspect of Aharon. So we need leaders. We need leaders like Moshe Rabbeinu. We need somebody who gives us the clear-cut, straight message, the purest form of the law from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But we also need leaders like Aharon. And it's Dafka in this week's Parsha where we're dealing with that aspect of Aharon, who gets to enter into the king's chamber. It's the one who's even willing to bring the sin along into the king's chamber, because Aharon is supposed to do an atonement for all the people's sins. He's got to know what they are. He's got to be friendly enough that they're going to want to talk to him, and he can relay those to Hashem. And hopefully, by getting himself involved even in the sin, that he will be able to transform the people into adequate vessels to hold the holy light. And so, with that, I leave you, and I hope that you have a wonderful Shabbos, and it should be filled with much bracha, a lot of blessing. Recognize everyone's traits for who they are, that we can never judge someone prematurely. If anyone was on the spot there, they would judge Aharon and say, ugh, look at that guy. He's getting involved but yet his intentions were so pure, and he wanted to bring the best out of Klal Yisrael. So let's not be judgmental. Let's be very forgiving. Let's be very kind. And let's be sweet to one another. Good Shabbos. B'simcha.